My name is Charles Lister. I'm an analyst for IHS Jane's Terrorism and Insurgency Centre. We're now just entering the third year of the armed conflict in Syria, and recent United Nations estimates have claimed that as many as 93,000 people have died in the conflict so far. We're in a situation where there are several hundred armed groups currently fighting against the government, some bigger than others, and we're witnessing several different strategic theatres spread throughout the country. Most notably, the north of the country is currently largely dominated by militant Islamist groups, several of which are affiliated to Al-Qaeda. First indications we had of a Hezbollah presence in Syria were allegations in early 2012 that its military forces were training Syrian military personnel in several areas of the country. A bit later that year, around mid-2012, we began to see indications of Hezbollah military forces protecting several villages in and around the town of Al-Qusayr in Homs Governorate, which lies very close to the eastern Lebanese border. Several months later, on the 2nd of October 2012, a senior Hezbollah military commander was killed in an improvised explosive device attack near Al-Qusayr, and 9 days after that, the Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah was forced to accept that Hezbollah military forces were indeed defending several villages in Homs Governorate. In the months thereafter, in late 2012 and early 2013, more indications appeared of Hezbollah military forces being active in southern Damascus and also in other areas of Homs Governorate. And since then, we've seen a steady escalation of Hezbollah military involvement in the Syrian conflict. The Hezbollah military presence in Syria reached a peak in early May 2013 when the Syrian military launched a major offensive on the town of Al-Qusayr, which had been held by opposition forces since January 2012. The offensive started in early May 2013 with approximately 2 weeks of very heavy airstrikes and artillery bombardments. And in the 2 weeks following that, there was a major ground assault on the town, and evidence since has suggested that as many as 1,200 Hezbollah military personnel, mostly including units of its special forces, were involved in that ground assault. The town itself fell to Syrian military control on the 5th of June 2013, sparking celebrations in several areas of Lebanon where Hezbollah has been particularly popular. Much has been said in terms of whether or not there was a strategic impact in terms of Al-Qusayr falling to the Syrian military. Thus far, it hasn't really had much of a strategic impact. The most important thing really to take away from it has been how it underlined the full-scale involvement of Hezbollah in certain strategic areas, at least, within the Syrian conflict. And this has certain consequences for Hezbollah, most prominently the fact that in the several last decades, Hezbollah has remained an extremely popular movement within the wider Middle East and Islamic world, largely due to its appearance as a resistance movement against Israel. And the Hezbollah involvement, the critical Hezbollah involvement in the Syrian conflict, in backing President Bashar al-Assad in what has become a sectarian battle, has led to the Hezbollah popular support in the wider region declining considerably. And that really underlines, and the fact that Hezbollah is still involved in the Syrian conflict really underlines the critical nature that Hezbollah has placed within keeping Bashar al-Assad in power in Syria. For now, it's very hard to tell exactly where the conflict's going to go and what role Hezbollah is going to play. What seems most likely is that Hezbollah forces will remain pivotively involved in areas along the Lebanese border, particularly in Homs Governorate and possibly in and around the town of Zabadani in the west of Rifdamash Governorate. For now, rumours of Hezbollah military deployments in Aleppo and elsewhere in Homs remain relatively unsubstantiated, although the possibility that they could deploy there isn't impossible by any means. We'll also expect an increase and continuation of spillover violence in neighbouring Lebanon, we'll see a continuation of Grad rocket attacks and mortar shelling of Shia villages in the eastern Bekaa Valley. It's also extremely likely that we'll see a continuation of improvised explosive devices and small arms ambushes of suspected Hezbollah militants in the Bekaa. And it's also feasible we may also see a large attack in Beirut or possibly elsewhere in the country targeting Hezbollah or areas supportive of Hezbollah. Meanwhile, small arms clashes, as we've seen in recent weeks in the southern city of Sidon and in the north in Tripoli, are extremely likely to continue. In terms of the wider picture, the increased pledges of Western support for the moderate opposition in Syria is being equaled by increased pledges of support for the militant Islamist opposition, predominantly from regional states and other interested religious-based actors. That is seeing us in a situation where Assad is seemingly being backed increasingly by external actors, and the opposition, or two parts of the opposition, are now separately being backed by other external actors. So as such, I see no foreseeable end to the conflict, and unfortunately the sectarian nature of the fighting that we're currently seeing escalate now, I also expect that to continue.